Okay, this is my 30-ounce fabric tutorial. And here are the supplies that are needed. A box blade with a brand new blade, a piece of fabric that's cut 9 by 13. If you're making it for the first time, I would highly recommend cutting it a little bit bigger, so maybe 10 by 13. But 13 is important to have for its length, and width about 10. Some Mod Podge, a foam brush or a Mod Podge brush. I highly recommend these. These are my favorite. A circle cutter if you have one, and if you don't have one, I'll show you how to make circle bottoms like this without having the fancy circle cutter. And this is a popsicle stick with a blade electrical taped together so that you can get this perfect seam without any struggles. And I always call it a seam, and it's not necessarily a seam, but a perfect cut for the top. So your first step is to take your 30-ounce and cover it with Mod Podge. So I'm going to take this, let me see, okay. I'm going to take this, and then I'm going to take the Mod Podge, and I am just going to squirt it on here and give it a nice good thick coat. Oops. Okay, now that you have a thick coat, like so, again, with fabric that has a very detailed seam like this, and you don't want it to twist really bad, you definitely want to take about your middle and put your middle on the cup first, so that you don't mess up your seam. So all I'm doing is placing it, and I'm tugging and smoothing it. I'm sorry. I'm a little nervous. Pull it and smooth, because you can feel the wrinkles. So there's a wrinkle right there, so I'm just going to push and pull until it flattens. Okay. Sorry. So now that it's flattened, all right, so the next step is to take some more Mod Podge and place it on the fabric right where you're going to cut your seam. And you want to do this because using Mod Podge, it will make the fibers stay together so that when you cut it, it will not fray. So there's that. And then you want to let it sit until it's completely dry. I need to add some right there so it stays down. You want to leave it until it completely dries. So I'm going to set this to the side while it dries. And I'm just going to set it right there. Okay, now that this is fully dry, I'm going to take electrical tape or washi tape and place it on my cup so that I can use that as a guide for a seam. And then I like to stand up my cup and eyeball it to make sure that it is nice, and I pulled it too tight. I'm going to use washi tape. So, and then I stand up my cup so that I can eyeball it and make sure it's straight. So I'll stand it up like this, and then I'll step back. And then I'll check it to make sure it's nice and straight. And then this is where it's really important for you to use a brand new blade in your box blade, or even if you have just an X-Acto, they work wonders. So I run it down the side of the fabric like that, and then I peel off the tape, and then I'll go back with scissors if I need to cut the little excess, but I actually moved my scissors. So like I said, I'll just go back with some scissors and I'll trim up right here. I do not cut right up here because of leaving a gap for the epoxy to adhere to the cup. I don't want to scratch that and let that be seen. So I'll put that like that. And then I peel this back like this. And then I'll do my next seam. So I'll just go ahead and put this right like this. Apparently it doesn't want to come out. Take my brush. Because the Mod Podge that you had before, the Mod Podge that you had before has now dried. So you need to reapply. And again, it's just pulling and tugging, and then you just go with your finger and you flatten it. And you pull this a little bit more right there. There we go. And then I double check where I need to put my seam, so I'll need to put it right here. So then just flattening it right like that. And then again, put a good thick layer of Mod Podge right here so that the fibers adhere. Now I'm going to let this dry. So while I'm waiting for this to dry to cut with the seam, I'll show you, so I can cut my seam, I'll show you how I did my bottoms before I got my circle cutter. So I just take the same style cup, and that I just had sitting around, and I cut out what I want on the bottom. And I use about a 3-inch square. And then I place it on top. And then I take my Mod Podge and I'll brush over it so that it stiffens and it holds the fibers together again. And I'll just set this to the side and wait for it to dry. Like that. And then this is dry enough to do the seam again. So again, you just take your washi tape. If you don't have washi tape, electrical tape. And do that. And then I'll take it and turn it upside down and make sure it's straight. So I just step back. It's a little crooked, so I need to fix it. Then again, I just use the blade and I run it right down the side of the tape. And it's pulling a little bit. Operator error. Peel off the tape, use the scissors, go back and cut. You could just use scissors, but I really like my seams to be really crisp, which which this one isn't, but it's going under, so it's okay. This one is my crisp seam. So, and then you just pull it over like that. There you go. So it looks something, sorry guys, I gotta check it. So it looks something like this. There you go. Then that's your seam right there. So the next step is to trim this, which this doesn't really matter because you're going to take and cut it. Because like I was saying, I believe at the beginning, you really want to leave a gap between the rim of the cup and the fabric to get a good seal. I did a tutorial on this several months ago, and I was telling people, oh, you can decide if you want to leave the top or trim it, but people were struggling with not getting a good seal on the epoxy. So now I personally just recommend everybody to cut the top. So, and then for the bottom, so your top is nice and trimmed so that when I show you how I changed it, sorry, I lost my train of thought, guys. So I will show you, but you want this nice and flush up to the top so that when you spin it around, you don't have any issues. So right now I'm just trimming the bottom to about, I don't know, I would say about 1 centimeter, and I'll show you why in just a minute. I really like when you fold this down. This is a different way than what I've been doing, but I like this. I prefer this method now. So I'll take Mod Podge and I'll stick it down. I think I need a little bit more Mod Podge, sorry. So that it doesn't have a chance of letting any silver shine through when you do your bottoms. So then I'll just press it down like this. Oops, made it come undone. And actually what I do, once I get this done, I turn it upside down until the Mod Podge dries so that I know that it's got a good seat, because then you're going to go around and you're going to cut off the little, I call them little nubs. So you're going to cut all these little nubs. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but I'll show you in just a minute. And if you have Mod Podge that goes over the side, it's no big deal because you're going to do 4 coats anyway. So these are what I'm calling nubs. You see those? So I guess ridges maybe. So then I'm going to turn this upside down actually and place it right there and just let it hold itself. And now while that's drying, this is the way that I used to do it before I got my circle cutter. So I really just took my scissors and I just went around and I trimmed it like this. There's really nothing to that part. I just kind of, if I see a pointy side, I cut off the pointy edges. And I just lay the scissors flat and go through and just do this. Right now it's cutting off the Mod Podge that I let leak over. It's not a perfect circle, but if you don't have a circle cutter, so right here I'll go back and I'll cut these myself. If you don't have a circle cutter, this works just as well, honestly. It may not be a perfect circle, but you can go back and tweak it a little bit. So that's how I get my circle bottoms if you don't have a circle cutter. So when the bottom is drying, go around and go ahead and just do a nice heavy coat over the whole cup, and you can count that as layer 1. You're going to want to do a minimum of 4 coats. If you want to be super safe, go ahead and do 5. It doesn't take very much Mod Podge. Sorry. It doesn't take very much, and it prevents something called oil slicks. And with oil slicks, they are what you probably won't really get on this fabric. Maybe you'll get it on like the yellow, but you won't get it on darker fabrics. You'll get it on your lights and definitely your whites if you don't do enough. So, and then you also want to make sure your top is done because we're going to trim it. And so it needs to be nice and kind of crisp or stiff. There we go. Stiff is the word I'm looking for. So you're going to want to make sure it's nice and stiff. I'm going to set this to the side and let it dry. The nubs are almost dry, and I'll show you what to do with those in just a second. Okay, so now this is dry. I take my box blade and I just slice off, I just slice off the nubs like this. Maybe not so much like this. It's not really working right. So let me trim this off, sorry. So I'll trim that off. And then I will go back and see. You want it to do like this. The Mod Podge isn't completely dry, but I'm going to do it this way because this isn't the normal box blade that I have. The box blade I have is a little bit thinner, so you can do it this way and it's a lot quicker. Just go pick up the nubs. So go around and just pick up the nubs like this and just cut them off. So nub, cut. This is actually much easier. Oops, sorry. Then just go around and see if you feel any, like I feel one right here. And I'll just slice that off right there. Or I should say snip. And there we go. So, just like that. Then I'll take my Mod Podge. That was way too much. But then I'll just take my Mod Podge and I'll actually just go down the sides with it since I put too much on it. And then I just put my circle on top. And I like doing it this way. I used to do it a different way, but I really enjoy the way, I really prefer the way it looks with it's kind of, you have no chance of having silver, and I just prefer this way. And you'll see that it kind of dips in a little bit, but when you put epoxy on your bottom, it covers it up with any issues. Sorry, let me get rid of some of this some of the thing. So your bottom will look something like this. Now that I showed you how to do the bottom, see, it just goes, it's continuous. And then boom, the bottom. So now that I showed you the bottom, I'm actually going to show you, the Mod Podge is wet, so I would definitely recommend not doing it wet. But I push until I find, and then I shove my nail into it, the little groove of where the rest of the cup meets the bottom. And then I'll stick my blade in it, and I just rotate the cup. Now, if you have trouble with this, which I've gotten feedback that people do have trouble, I would recommend taking washi tape. Part of the reason why I love washi tape is because washi tape is the same dimensions as your base, your bottom part of your cup. It's 15 millimeters, and that's what washi tape is. So at this point, so let me go ahead and peel off the bottom because we're not going to put a bottom on there, and I need to go back and trim it just a hair, or I'm sorry, cut it some more. It's a lot harder to work with when it's wet, and it frays. So if you need If you can't get the groove and you fall out of the groove or whatnot, which has happened to me, I would just use washi tape because it's the same width as the base of your cup. So that frayed a little bit. Like I said, that's what you don't want to happen, is the spraying, and that's because your Mod Podge was red. So that's what not to do, is do it before it's dry. So there's that. Sorry, all the excess is sticking. So that's how you do either a bottom or a bottom with silver. And now I'm going to wait for this to dry so I can get a good I call it a top seam, I guess. I don't know what else to call it. If you wanted to match like this, then I would, like I said, just take the washi tape, run it all the way across the top, and that way your seam at the top and your seam at the bottom. Again, I don't really know what else to call it other than seam. Seam at the top and seam at the bottom is the same size. Now I'm going to show you how to do your bottom. This is just, if you have thicker, the bigger popsicle sticks, these would probably work better. Then you don't have to use two, but this works just as well. People are struggling to, excuse me, I'm so sorry. We're struggling to get, knocking things over, struggling to get a good seam at the top. Again, I don't know what better way to call it than a seam. And what I was doing is I had popsicle sticks stacked and I was doing a line. It was actually this right here. I was doing a line. I saw somebody else do this, and that was how they were getting their seams at the top so straight. I actually personally struggled with it a little bit. It wasn't exactly what I needed. One of my group members kind of revamped it and did it this way, and they just took their box blade and ran it and just twisted it around their blade. But I really like to have a close seam because I think, ooh, please excuse my mess. Because I think that you need a seam, but I like them to be really close like this. So I kind of took what she did and I kind of ran with it. I had this idea. So again, it's just a blade on a popsicle stick to give you some height and some electrical tape. But you really want to make sure that it's the same size top all the way through so you don't mess up with your dimensions, I guess. So then I'll just set it right here on the table and I will run my fabric or my cup around it. Your seam is a little tricky, so be careful there. And I would just go around twice just to make sure that you don't have any snags anywhere. And then I'll pull this off. And if you do have snags, which I have some right here, I will, I will just go right here with the scissors and trim it. Ooh, didn't trim it all. That is right where my seam is, so it's a little bit thicker. So I'll actually take my blade and slice it. And then there you go. Whoop. There you go. There is your, and again, you'll just need to just fix it a little bit. But most of the time, this is what you'll get. This perfect seam, right like that. And all you do with right here, you will want to clean this up. I personally use a baby wipe and clean it up to get the Mod Podge off. So what I recommend, now that you're done and you have your one whole layer, you have your seams, or your bottom if you wanted it, but you have your top seam and your seam right like this, just pretty straight. I will do probably another 3 to 4 layers. I say 4, and 4 is a really good number to go off of. But I also figured out the other day to prevent like oil slicks, to take and do it until it's completely smooth. Like when you touch it, it's like silky smooth. Right now it's bumpy, you can feel the texture of the fabric, but once you have enough thick layers, it's nice and silky smooth. Also, let it completely dry, so set it aside for 24 hours before you epoxy it. If you don't, you will run the risk of getting cloudy look to it. And other than that, I believe that is it. If you have any questions, shoot me a message or put a comment down or whatever like that. So if you have any more questions, or, well, not anymore. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks for watching.